Hi, and welcome to another narration presented by yours truly, Cryptids Roost. Let's just take a moment's silence for all the haters, Karens, and the trolls. That's enough. Be sure to check out the blooper reel at the end of the video, which is then followed by the end screen, where you will find more videos listed. Don't forget to hit the like button and drop a comment for the algorithm. It would be very much appreciated. So, grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not. The Hungry Fangs of Toliver's Grove. This awesome story is written by Scare in a Box. Death slept in a house at the end of Toliver's Grove. He hadn't always slept there, but found the house to be conducive to its needs. Once, Toliver's Grove was a bustling bedroom community, but it relied on a nearby factory for prosperity. Once that factory shut down, all the managers and accountants who'd bought the cosy little houses nearby drifted elsewhere, leaving only husks behind. The creature liked such husks. It was a thin, fragile creature with weak limbs, incapable of much in the way of physical defense. So shelter was essential as it lay in wait for life to consume. It only needed to feed rarely, and this house was perfect. Every so often, something with a beating heart and warm red blood would enter. It would take its sustenance and wait. Death slept in the house, but things that sleep can all wake. The creature didn't have a name, as it was not aware enough of the world outside itself to understand the need for a name. But out in the world, it might be called a vampire for its penchant for drinking blood, and leaving hollowed out husks behind. Like vampires of human legend, it vaguely resembled a human in shape and colouring, but that is where it diverged from conventional expectations. Rather than fangs and claws, the creature had an extra organ on its back that resembled a hump. And rather than a human head, its features more closely resembled an anteater with large blood-red eyes. Death slept most of the time, but on the evening in question, the creature woke. It smelled blood in the air, and its stomach rumbled. Its long, thin fingers rubbed over its hairless head as it woke, and then down over the top of its hump. Hundreds of holes spread over the top of the hump. It used these to feed. When it was ready, hundreds of tick-like creatures bred inside the hump would emerge, gather the blood the vampire needed, and then it would eat the ticks until it was satiated. The noises of the house told it that prey had entered. Prey, in this instance, was a group of urban explorers who had heard whispered rumours of the house on Toliver's Grove. People said odd things happened there. Locals said the house was haunted. Some went as far as to say the whole street was cursed, but the explorers had only come for one house. They brought trappings of modern discovery, including cameras, EMP detectors, headlamps, and sleeping bags to stay the night. The creature knew none of this. It only knew a meal had arrived. Nor did the noises these people made make sense to it at all. Human speech was no more meaningful than a bird's warbling, except of course the creature knew that the prey had more blood and that these noises meant people. In this case, it was 5 people, 2 couples and 1 single. A proper feast. The creature listened to their noises as a way of tracking them around the house. When their voices got too close, it would creep away. If needed, it would sequester in a closet or climb up in the vents. Once it shimmied up inside the flute at the back of the fireplace to move from the first floor to the second floor. "It certainly looks creepy here," one of them said. "Sometimes these local haunted houses are just disappointing, but this place has an aura. I love it." "Let's take a brief look around," another said. "Then we'll pick spots to set up for the night." They clambered over the house looking for things of interest, exclaiming over this or that as they moved. They particularly went crazy over an upstairs bedroom with a chimney connected to the downstairs fireplace. Their EMP devices went off, though they might have been interested to know that the only supernatural thing present was in exactly the opposite direction at the time. The vampire hunkered down in the shadows, mostly in a closet. The meal smelled delightful, and it waited for them to settle down into one spot so it could pick its own place for the night. Its consumption method worked well with its prey close to the vampire, since the vampire didn't actually feed upon its prey directly, but sent out hordes of little blood-sucking fleas to gather its meal. "We should stay in the fireplace room tonight," one of the explorers said. Her name, though, the vampire neither knew nor cared, was Eve. She was the newest member of the group, and as such always tried a little too hard. Her boyfriend was part of it and had taught the others into bringing her along. She'd been telling her own friends that he was the one. The pressure of making things work was especially strong for her. Unlike the others, she noticed the odd piles of fur around the edges of the room, leftovers from the vampire's meals. But she was afraid to point it out and have them laugh, so she said nothing. Eve's boyfriend Joe, throwing an arm around his girlfriend, said, "This room's good." He had been sleeping with Eve's best friend for a few months, until the other woman broke things off and threatened to tell. Given this, Joe was particularly preoccupied with making sure he seemed innocent, and not at all focused on finding supernatural clues. "Eve and I will stay here." The other couple claimed one of the side bedrooms for the night. Grace and Kelly didn't want to be exploring with the others anymore, but they hadn't told each other that. Both of them kept it a secret for the others' sake. Only the uncoupled guy was left to select a spot to sleep that night. He glanced nervously around him. "I guess I'll stay downstairs. Someone should." Truth was, he really didn't mind the distance from the others. He suspected none of them took this seriously, at least not as seriously as he did. George really believed in ghosts and the supernatural. His parents had died when he was young, only 15, and since then he had a personal mission of proving things on the other side of the veil existed. What did worry him was the feel of the house. It was too quiet, without any of the usual evidence of animal intrusion. If asked, he would have said the house seemed unnaturally quiet. No one asked. "There are no bedrooms down there," Grace said, practically. "Are you certain you want to sleep there?" She smelled particularly good to the vampire, and so he tracked her words closer. "I don't need a bedroom," George said. "I always feel like a horror movie when we camp out places like this," Kelly said. Grace leaned her head on Kelly's shoulder. "Let's hope not, since I think only Eve comes anywhere near fatal girl status." "You sure you want to sleep alone?" Kelly asked. "In horror movies..." "This isn't a horror movie," George snapped, then smiled to soften the harsh tone of his words. the house had him on edge. They went back to exploring, and the vampire hid. Ticks buzzed inside its hump, preparing for a huge meal. It would need a lot of ticks to transport so much blood. Most would end up wasted. The vampire could only ingest so much, but it wasn't interested in food conservation. Each of the nearby creatures would provide it a snack. Grace would be the main course. The skin on its hump rippled, and a few stray ticks emerged from the holes. Nighttime came, as it always did, after the day slowly frittered its time away. The people did not immediately go to sleep, which irritated the vampire vaguely. It was hungry, and red-blooded things usually fell asleep in a timely fashion. These, however, turned on odd false lights and lit the house well after the sun was down. George and Joe lit a fire in the fireplace, and the vampire didn't like the smell of the gas they used to help ignite the small blaze. Luckily for the vampire, they put the fire out when Eve complained it made too much smoke and wasn't actually heating anything. Finally, they pulled out their sleeping bags and settled down. The vampire found a convenient spot between a defunct toilet and a shower. It was directly between the two couples, and it felt the heat pouring off of them, allowing it to easily track them. When their heartbeat slowed with sleep, it hunkered down, positioning his hump above it like a turtle's shell, and emitted the first cloud of ticks. Eve was the first to feel the ticks bite. She stirred in her sleep, smacking at her lip where they first settled. Then the cloud fell in force. She woke, eyes flying wide, and she tried to stand to fight. But millions of fleas clouded over her, and in the end, she didn't fight at all. The deadly mantle settled around her until all she saw was a rippling blackness. She slipped into a deeper sleep, an eternal one. Meanwhile, the vampire put out another cloud of ticks, and another, and another. It kept pumping them out as fast as it could. It had lived in the house a long time, and in that time, its ticks had chewed tiny holes through the walls, ceilings and floors. They travelled without impediment through the house and the rooms, swarming under doors, but also just seemingly blooming out of the woodwork. Joe woke up more quickly, perhaps alerted by Eve's brief struggles. He managed to get to his feet and stumble a few feet, swatting at the air, at the seemingly endless cloud of death. He caught a few ticks that had already fed, splatting droplets of his own blood along with ticks over his body. His head grew light and he fell. He crawled a few feet, dragging himself towards some impossible salvation. By this time the vampire was feeding, slurping in snoutfuls of ticks and drawing the blood from the tiny bodies. Grace and Kelly felt the bites of the ticks at the same time. Kelly might have made it to the window and attempted to jump to safety, if not for Kelly stopping for Grace. Kelly wouldn't leave without Grace, and she passed away without ever waking. It might have comforted Kelly to know, as death stole over them both, that leaping from the window wouldn't have stopped the ticks. They would have been just as happy drinking from her out of the grass as inside the house. Death came swiftly, draining one drop at a time, but by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of ticks. The vampire gorged itself on Kelly and Grace. Already there was too much blood to consume. Many of the ticks were dying around the room, in piles against the walls. It didn't see any point in creating more ticks for the creature downstairs. It ate until it could eat no more, and then it hunkered down, closed its great red eyes and fell into a dreamless sleep. Unfortunately for the vampire, humans weren't like its usual mindless prey. Had it been a family of raccoons that fed the vampire that night, then it would have slept deeply and long and woken refreshed. This was not what happened. Instead, it woke smelling smoke. It twitched and opened a red eye to thick air. Piles of ticks still lay around the room. It might have snacked on some of them later, if not for the heat and smoke quickly filling the upstairs bathroom. The vampire scuttled out of the room and into the hall, only to find the same problem there. In fact, it saw flames coming from one of the rooms and from the stairs. It let out a high squealing noise, the only sound it ever made, and turned to climb up into the vents, but they were hot, burning its skin. Fear of death is ingrained, and it turned out that even this creature of death could feel that racing pulse of terror at the idea of its own life snuffed out. There weren't many options of where to go. It could have braved the windows and jumped down, but didn't see any clear path out that way. It hurried down a few of the stairs, but found its way to the front door blocked by flame. There was one last avenue. It ran over to the chimney in the second floor bedroom. It had on occasion shimmied up or down the flue to get someplace. This time up seemed more tempting, but if it reached the roof, it feared it would be trapped there. Its limbs were too thin and fragile to survive the fall, so instead, the creature used its long hairless arms and legs to propel itself through the tight chimney flue to the ground floor. Then it crawled from the chimney, skin coated in old ashes and eyes stinging from fresh smoke. There was a clear path to the back door. It ran out, smoke billowing after it. Behind the house was an expanse of woods. New woods. Since back when the factory off Toliver's Grove had been functioning, it was a park. The vampire scurried towards the trees, but glanced back towards the line of houses along the street. Perhaps it briefly considered simply switching houses, but something instinctual told it this was not wise. In the vampire's last glance of the street, it saw George in front of the house, watching it burn. The flames cast a bright, hungry glow and a thick plume of black smoke curling up into the sky. George's face was covered in tears and he held a red gas can. The vampire wasn't hungry, so George didn't interest it overly much, but it did wonder briefly what the red-blooded man was doing. It couldn't have known and wouldn't have cared that George had woken early to find his friends dead and the inexplicable hordes of ticks covering the entire house. George had finally found his proof of the supernatural, and he really wished he hadn't. Though if he'd stopped to think of it, maybe he would have been glad that he wasn't in a horror movie and survival wasn't really predicated on final girl tropes. The vampire headed off into the woods. If it carried anything with it from the experience, the vampire held a slight sorrow at losing its stored snack and its feeding grounds. But both things had happened to the vampire before, and would again. Death lives a very long time. And I hope you enjoy the blooper reel. The noises of the house told the prey. Some went as far as nor did the noises these people make any sense. They clambered over the house looking for things of it. Though they might have been interested to know that the only supernatural thing present was in It was hungry and red-blooded. George and Joe lit a fire in the fireplace, and the vampire didn't like the smell of the gas they used to it. It kept pumping them as... Fear of death is ingrained, and it turned out that even... Hey family, please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the ass of the subscription button as well. And remember to chokehold that notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. And by subscribing, you'll be the first to see all of our new spooky creepypasta stories. A very big thank you to Scared in a Box for allowing me to narrate this awesome story. Make sure to check out their Reddit page for more brilliant stories as well. And be sure to take a look at their playlist here for more of their stories that I may have already narrated. I would just like to say a very big thank you to all of the authors that I have worked with and all the ones that I will work with in the future. So thank you all, my brothers and sisters. And why not hashtag cryptidsroost in your comments. A quick thank you to all of my Cryptids Roost community family too. We are now well on our journey to 1,000 subscribers. So please spread the word and help us to grow and expand. And don't forget to share the videos as well. If you would like to throw me $1 or 3, I'd be very much appreciative. I do have PayPal, paypal.me/cryptidsroost. Alternatively, I have an account at buymeacoffee.com. You don't even need to register on either site to donate. You can also follow us at my Facebook group, Twitter and Instagram. I also have Ko-Fi and BitChute. I also have a subreddit if you have a story you would like me to narrate for you. All relevant links will be below. And don't forget to check out the end screen. See above. That will also list some more videos in my back catalogue. Take care everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful and peaceful night. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness
is not.